Feast week is off to a roaring start with Zach Edey eating against Gonzaga, dropping 25 and 14 points and advancing to face Tennessee. What's going to happen there? We're going to talk about it.
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What is up, folks? Welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, a daily national college hoop show, part, of course, of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are your co-hosts. I'm Andy Patton. He is Isaac Shade. Today's episode of Locked On College Basketball is brought to you by Prize Picks. Folks, go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnCollege. Use promo code LockedOnCollege. You will get a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks is daily fantasy sports made easy. Well, Isaac, we had an incredible first day of Feast Week on Monday. Fantastic results in the Maui Invitational, the Empire Classic, tons of different MTEs to talk about. As we're recording right now, we got 56 undefeated teams. We are recording before the final results of the UCLA Marquette game, the final results of the Kansas Chaminade game, although we're not expecting there to be a lot of mystery in that game.
No.
I do want to start.
Kansas is up 21-9 right now, by the way.
So,
And
yeah, I think
we
we're
are
probably safe there.
We are 5 seconds away from Akron becoming undefeated no more. So we'll keep tabs on that.
Keep you posted on all of that stuff. But Isaac, I want to start with what was the most exciting game on Monday, kind of until it wasn't late in the second half. That was between Gonzaga and Purdue. Purdue, of course, top 2 ranked team in the country. We had them number 1 in our Locked On College Basketball top 25. AP poll has them second, and they looked the part. They looked like one of the top teams in the country. And for me, I thought Gonzaga looked like a team that absolutely is capable of hanging with them. I think there's a lot of mystery coming into the year of kind of who is Gonzaga going to be in the post-Drew Timme era. They also lose Julian Strawther, Malachi Smith, Rasir Bolton. Their entire bench hits the transfer portal. Like, this is a team that comes into this year with a brand new roster and kind of a lot of, are they going to be at that same level? And while they ended up losing this game because of a horrendous shooting performance in the second half, literally did not make a three-pointer in the entire second half of this game. My main takeaway for Gonzaga in particular was they're capable of hanging with the top 3 team in the country. And my main takeaway on Purdue, they're one of the best teams in the country. I'm curious what you thought about those 2 teams in that game.
Oh, Andy, you're spot on. Like, these 2 teams combined, Purdue was 4 of 17 from 3. Gonzaga 6 of 32.
6 of 30. They missed 26 threes and hung close with a top team. That's impressive in its own right.
It's combined 10 of 49 from deep, Andy. We can't have that from 2 of our top 11 teams in the country. But no, I mean, this was coming into it. We expected this to be the crown jewel of the first day of Maui. And as you said, obviously we haven't seen Marquette and UCLA yet at this point because homie is almost 40 years old and I got to go to bed. But Andy, yeah, like Gonzaga and Purdue are right there. We knew it about Purdue. We weren't sure about Gonzaga. And at least on Monday, Gonzaga was up to the task, leading at the half at 35-0 and 35-30, excuse me.
That would have been an incredible comeback.
What a first half that was. Man, we're going to talk about that for decades. What was interesting was Zach Edey got off to he was 2 of 2 to start, but then slow after that.
Yeah.
But then, man, he just started cooking. You said he was eating. And part of that, I thought Graham Ike was able to do a better job on him than I expected. Gonzaga didn't double on Zach Edey, but was just kind of chipping and getting at him a little bit, and it got to him some. But then he, as he does, found his way. And that was the thing, is Purdue came out in the second half and was what I expected Purdue to be outside of the three-point shooting. And that's the thing, Andy, perhaps one of the biggest takeaways is if Purdue is not going to be able to shoot at a high level from 3, we know the numbers. We harped on them all last year. They will not be national championship capable, not even caliber, capable of doing it. So that's what they're going to have to get better at, because I don't care how good or big or tall Zach Edey is. If I'm able to sag down on him and not respect you from 3, Purdue can't do it. No, I expect them to long term, though. That's it.
What was interesting to me is, like, I think Gonzaga executed a lot of the things in their game plan that they wanted to execute. They wanted to prevent Purdue's guards from getting a lot of open looks from three. They shot 4 of 17. They wanted to attack on Zach Edey on drop coverage and try to punish him by making shots over him, in that drop coverage. They attempted to do that. They just weren't able to knock the shots down. They wanted to get out to a fast start. They went on a 12-0 run, in the first few minutes, led for literally 16 and a half minutes in the first half. Like those were, I mean, I wasn't in the huddle, but those were likely things that Mark Few harped on of here's what we want to do in this game. Don't let the guards beat them, attack them on those drop coverage. And Gonzaga executed for the most part on those things. They got out in transition. They forced Purdue into a bunch of turnovers. I think Gonzaga had 12 steals in this game. Like they really did a lot of the things they wanted to do. But in the second half, they literally just could not get the ball to go through the hoop. If you had I said this to you offline, Isaac, if you had told me that Gonzaga's defense was going to look significantly better than their offense against Purdue, I would not have believed you. But Gonzaga held Purdue to 73 points and a pretty poor performance in terms of field goal percentage. But, doesn't matter if you only score 63 and you can't buy a bucket in the second half.
Yeah, and we talking about offense and defense, we always look at Ken Palm and say, all right, who is top 10 in both offensive and defensive efficiency right now? There is one team in the country that is top 5 in both right now, and that's the team called the Purdue Boilermakers.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, so they are 3rd in adjusted O and 5th in adjusted D. And Andy, if they're going to be able to hang around right there, I mean, they're going to be able to do what they need to do. Also, with Zach Edey, it's not unique to this game, but he just gets fouled and it not be called so much. Like it's like the Shaqification of it all. Like just because Shaq is a ginormous human being doesn't mean he's not getting fouled. And I wish refs would adjudicate that a little more capably going forward. But bottom lining this for me, and I think we've kind of already said it, but let me just echo what Jay Billis said on the broadcast, aside from his old school references to Snoop Dogg. Andy, he said, I think it was in the last minute of the game, he said, listen, this isn't an Elite 8 game. This is what I'm watching right here. And I have zero disagreement with that. And I feel like we're going to be able to say that about so many games this week from what's going on in Maui, obviously, aside from this Kansas Chaminade game going on in front of my eyeballs right now.
Well, I think that Tuesday's game between Purdue and Tennessee is probably going to be a Final Four game because Tennessee, they advanced past Syracuse. Another game that was kind of similar to the Gonzaga-Purdue game in the sense that Syracuse hung around for a while. They hung around for quite a bit in the first half, and then Tennessee went on a big run to close out the first half. And from there, they kind of just held on. Nice performance from the Vols. I thought a solid performance from Syracuse. They still have plenty of work to do, but Judah Mintz is an absolute dude. He's not going to be fun for anybody to have to handle this year. I'm sure ACC teams are already sweating a little bit, seeing what he's doing. But Dalton Knecht for Tennessee, he missed a big chunk of the second half with the cramp, and we have to hope
all it was.
Yeah, we have to hope that's not going to linger for him for the next couple of days because I'd love to see Purdue and Tennessee both at full strength. But the way that Knecht played in this game, 15 points in the first half, just absolutely phenomenal performance from him. And you look at the thousands of players that joined new schools in the transfer portal this year, and Hunter Dickinson's going to get the most attention for being like the perfect fit for a Bill Self offense at Kansas. But Dalton Knecht is exactly what Rick Barnes' team needed. I mean, literally exactly what they needed. An athletic wing who can score, who's a offensive-minded score-first player, who's capable enough defensively to fit into Rick Barnes' defense. Like, it is incredible that, like, if you drew up a creative player to fit into Rick Barnes' team, it literally would look like Dalton Knecht. And if he's healthy for the rest of this tournament, I think we're going to see Tennessee. There's a very real chance they're going to win this whole thing.
Yeah, I think I like to call it Frankensteining it, and I'm right with you. Andy. I think the problem though is Tennessee's not going to be probably at full strength because Tobe Awaka is probably going to be out. He went out early in the first half there, and that will be critical in their front court capability trying to stop what Mr. Zach Edey's trying to do that we just talked about. Now, Andy, I thought Syracuse did a nice job of like pushing. But then each like at the end of both halves, Tennessee just went on these kind of ridiculous big runs, like spanning the end of the first half and into the second half, 15-1 run to make it 36-25. Late in the Syracuse cut it to 48-45. I was like, dang, that's way to go. Orange cutting it back. Coach Autry's over there just getting a little bit happy. But then from 52 to 48, eventually we got there. 6 minutes and 45 seconds left to go. Tennessee goes on a 21-8 run to close the game. If they're going to have that kind of kick, that kind of, to put it in some running parlance, dude, that nobody's going to be able to stop that. And that's with, you're getting the cramps, you're getting all this stuff. I'll walk it out like Tennessee, man. And Ziegler getting him some minutes. I know he was a little bit rusty on Monday, but they're just working him in more and more and more. And you love to see it. Andy, this Tennessee team's legit.
No doubt.
Well, folks, that was the beginning of Maui. We'll talk a little bit about what's going on later. As we said, don't forget, Kansas Chaminade's going on as we record. We won't catch Marquette UCLA. We'll have to talk about that in case anything crazy happens later. But, oh, man, the Empire Classic almost did not get the UConn-Texas matchup we were hoping for, but Louisville. And so we did. In this game, the reigning national champion UConn, we've been thinking about this one sophomore. But, Andy, Donovan Clingan, the one we expect to do it all, it's a different sophomore that had himself a night on Monday. Alex Karaban dropped 20 points. Have we been hyping up the wrong UConn second-year man? We'll talk about that in just a second. Right after I tell you that this episode of Locked On College Basketball is brought to you by LinkedIn. Look, these days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to make sure that you have the best qualified candidates available. And that's why you got to check out LinkedIn Jobs, which helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. It's honestly so easy to create a free job post. And then you just add that job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your profile to spread the word to everyone that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and then ultimately hire. This is why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus the leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free right now at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Again, that's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Okay, Andy, Empire Classic, big stuff going on there. We had UConn versus Texas. The consolation game was Indiana and Louisville, and they are what they are. We're going to talk about UConn and Texas. UConn got off to this ridiculous start, Andy. I kept updating it like 5-0, 9-2, 14-5, 27-11, and it just kept expanding. And Andy, I was like, dude, reigning national champs about to run away with this bad boy, especially because Dylan D'Souza obviously already not in, and no Caden Shedrick on this night. And I was like, Andy, Longhorns, Rodney Terry, these guys are in trouble tonight. But they started to come back. We'll get to that response from the Longhorns in a little bit. Clingan, he did fine.
Yeah.
But talk about my man, Alex Karaban.
Yeah, Alex Karaban has looked fantastic this year. And I think there was so much attention coming into the year about Donovan Clingan and his high NBA draft stock for his size, his efficiency. And certainly I don't think Donovan Clingan has been bad by any stretch of the imagination.
No.
I think he's filled the role that UConn wants from him. But Alex Karaban has stepped up in a massive way in the absence of Jordan Hawkins, in the now absence of Stephon Castle, who's been out with an injury for these Huskies team. I mean, Karaban has scored in double figures in every one of his games. He scored 13, 14, 15, 20, and 22 in the 5 games that UConn has played. He's been a tremendous outside shooter all season long. I mean, he was great last year, particularly the NCAA tournament. He really turned it on for that UConn squad. And now, I mean, I'm not an NBA draft guy. Maybe we'll bring our guy Leaf Toledo on to talk a little bit more about some of the draft stuff here in the future. But to me, Karaban, with his size, with his outside shooting, like this is a young man who's really, really been impressive early on the season. He stepped into a much bigger scoring role for UConn and for a team that needed a little bit of extra help with, again, the losses of the players that are gone, like Sanogo and Hawkins and everybody. And now with Castle out, they needed somebody to step up. And Tristan Newton didn't have a great shooting night. Cam Spencer didn't have a great shooting night, and yet they still rolled to a victory against a very good Texas team, in part because of somebody like Karaban.
Yeah, man. So impressive. You love to see that. You love to see guys stepping up. And that's what Texas was going to need to happen with some of that depth concern. Right? We talked a lot about that even ahead of the season we were worried about Texas's depth, and then you're without Dessou, without Shedrick, and Coach Terry's going to need dudes to step up, and you get some of that. Like Ithiel Horton had a little bit of a better night, 11 points off the bench, 4 of 9. So we're looking at that. But Andy, one of the things I'm looking at that I'm a little bit concerned right now is Max Abmas's shooting.
Yeah.
Right. Against Louisville, 6 of 19. On Monday against UConn, 4 of 14. So combined in the Empire Classic, homie shoots 10 of 33. That's just 30%, 30.3% if we're being, specific. Andy, are we concerned about Max Abmas at the, major conference level? Or is it just like, hey, bro, it's 2 games, whatever, move on?
A little bit. I mean, I think you look at this game, Abmas had 5 assists and 1 turnover. So it's not like he was, if you're really concerned about him moving up a level, I think one thing you would see is like not only less efficiency scoring the basketball, which I think anybody probably could have expected that Abmas going into a similar role for a team that's just playing better teams is probably going to be a little bit less efficient, but he's still taking care of the basketball in a decent way. 2 of 5 from 3. I mean, 40% in one game. In this game, he was just 2 of 9 on 2-pointers, really struggled. And again, UConn has really good rim protection in Donovan Clingan. And so I think part of that might have just been the opponent. But I do think that part of Abmas's struggles is related to the other aspect of Texas you talked about, which is the lack of depth. They don't have, Shandal Weaver hasn't really been that guy. Ithiel Horton is inconsistent. Tyrese Hunter obviously can kind of fill more of that guard role or lead guard role for Texas as well. But I think there's a bit more pressure on Hunter and Abmas to fill these like big roles because there's not a lot coming up behind them. And without Dessou, who could certainly handle more of a scoring responsibility, without Shedrick in this game, there's just a lot of pressure on Abmas to produce. And he didn't have it in this game. I think he'll have better days, but I also think if he continues to have to take 15, 18 shots per game for Texas, A, that's bad news for Texas, regardless. And B, I think you're going to see his efficiency certainly plummet because that's just not super. It was sustainable at Oral Roberts. It's not going to be sustainable here.
And to my own question, it would be unfair of me to not point out his first 3 games when he shot 50% or better in all 3 of them. Right. At the beginning of the season, everything before these 2 games, he was shooting 51.6%. So I think he's going to be okay. Small sample size. We will keep tabs on it, but we'll see. Whatever. Now let's get to Texas though. Because while they could have been just the doors blown off this thing, right? Again, we said it was 27-11, and UConn just hitting everything in sight. Texas makes a big game out of this, Andy. They made a second half push, showed me infinitely more than what they did on Sunday against Louisville. It felt like there was like this kind of hangover from what happened in the Louisville game. They still weren't able to figure things out, especially without Shedrick. And then something, I don't know what Coach Terry's talking about at halftime, but they got enough to make a game of it at least. And that's all you need to see sometimes. I mean, UConn is legitimately one of the main contenders to repeat as national champion, right? And so I think Texas showed us something there in the second half in particular.
100%. I think Dylan Mitchell is fantastic. I mean, he was 21 points, 8 boards in this game. He looked incredible. Again, UConn's guards struggled to shoot a little bit. I think you got to give some credit to Texas's defense and the physicality that they tend to play with to keep this game within reach in the second half and then make a nice push the way that they did. I have far less concerns about Texas now than I did after they barely escaped against Louisville. I still have Texas as a top 20 team, right kind of on that border. I think this game actually gave me even more confidence because they did this without 2 starting front court players. And when they get those guys back, I think that this is a team that nobody's going to want to face for sure.
I wouldn't. I'll tell you that much, Andy. Anything else to say on Indiana and Louisville? I mean, is Louisville, we talked about it yesterday. Louisville might be a little bit improved. Indiana just really struggling right now. Where are we at with that?
Yeah, the shoe hasn't quite dropped on Indiana yet. They've continued to escape with wins, but they frankly haven't looked good in the majority of the games and the majority of the minutes that they have played up to this point in the season. They were 1 of 11 from 3 in this game. I mean, at least they weren't relying on it significantly, but can't shoot 9% from 3 and expect to win a whole lot of basketball games. They did here because Louisville is also quite bad at shooting and scoring in basketball right now. I think we're seeing the Cardinals be a bit better than they were last year. Certainly competitive games against Texas and Indiana. Certainly
another good game for Sky Clark.
Yeah, and Sky Clark looked good. And 19 points, not very efficient, but 19 points. The main thing I took away from this game is that there was a combined 63 free throw attempts, and that is disgustingly gross. Like, that is, I don't know whether it was incredibly happy officiating from the time that I was watching. It looked like legit fouls that I was seeing. So I just think there was some slop in this game, and hopefully that kind of stuff gets ironed out. But these are not two teams that I have I certainly no expectations for Louisville, but frankly, my expectations for Indiana have dropped a fair amount as well.
Yeah, a combined 6 of 30 from these two teams. So very similar. Oh my gosh, Andy, I'm seeing it. It's that dumb commercial where homegirl's dipping a strawberry in sour cream. What on earth? Has anybody else seen it? It's terrible. This is an abomination. Okay. Mackenzie Mbako. We talked yesterday about his 4 and 2 point outings in that one double digit. This was another 4 point outing for Mackenzie Mbako. Got to contribute more for the Hoosiers.
Well, we got great news. Virginia scored more than 20 points in the second half against Wisconsin. They did not do the same in the first half against the Badgers. A baffling offensive performance from Virginia. We're going to talk about that and a few other games of note from Monday after a word from today's sponsor, Prize Picks. Folks, if you want to play alongside some of Prize Picks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and comedian Andrew Schultz, you can now find community plays under the promos tab on the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the Prize Pick community every single week. And with the basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League, a league created specifically for combo projections that include 2 or more players from different sports or leagues. So for an example, you can bet on LeBron James plus Travis Kelce at a 10.5 combination of 3-pointers made and receptions. Folks, Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. It's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. And folks, Prize Picks has themselves a great Thanksgiving Day discount on Christian McCaffrey's rushing plus receiving yards has been discounted to 0.5. That's it. That is the biggest no-brainer in this industry. Just hit the over on that. You're good. You're going to make yourself some cash. So go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege. Use that promo code lockedoncollege for a first deposit match of up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege. Use that promo code lockedoncollege for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks. It's daily fantasy sports made easy. All right, Isaac, closing out the show today. Not quite doing our 6-pack that we typically do on our Monday shows, but we got a couple of stories to talk about. We got 2 game results we want to discuss. We got a eligibility story about Aziz Bandaogo we want to get to, and then we're going to end the show talking quickly about the preview of the Maui Invitational games on Tuesday between Tennessee and Purdue. We don't know, again, as we're recording right now, whether Kansas is going to play Marquette or UCLA, but we'll certainly get to those games later in the week. But Isaac, let's start with this Virginia-Wisconsin game. Virginia ranked 24th, Wisconsin unranked, both teams kind of right on the periphery of being ranked teams by most kind of outlets right now. And Wisconsin went out and sent a message, and Virginia forgot to bring their offense. They just were not there offensively. A 24-point victory for Wisconsin, 65-41 was the final score. It was 28-18 at halftime. Reese Beekman was leading Virginia with points at halftime. Isaac, he had 5. He had 5 points. What the heck happened to Virginia in this one?
They Virginia'd. I mean, they just have games like this, dude. Like, you agree? I mean, I was just looking as you were talking to remind myself, they are 362nd in the nation in adjusted tempo. Andy, do you know how many teams there are in Division I?
I do. There are 362.
Right, they are dead last in adjusted tempo. And so it's like this 24-point loss for Virginia is like an 87-point loss for any other school in America. Like, I mean, it's insane. They fall from 19 to 39 at Ken Palm. But they're doing all this. And then on the other side, they're still doing their thing defensively. They're not elite as they usually are. They're 17th right now. They had 7 blocks in the first half, Andy. What are we doing? Some people don't have that in like 3-game stretch, and they do it in 20 minutes. But it's just, I think this was a first half of just two putrid offenses going up against each other. I mean, we get that sometimes, and that results in this 28-18 halftime score before Wisconsin finally figured out a little bit how to unlock the Virginia defense, and then they were off and running a little bit more.
Yeah, Wisconsin's a very interesting team to me. They scored 105 points in their first game. They hold Virginia to 41 points. You'd think just by knowing those two facts that you're talking about like a really premier team, but they're not. They're not there yet. I think that they got some good pieces. I think they're going to have some good games, but I feel for my one of my good friends who's a big Wisconsin fan, because this feels like it's going to be a pretty frustrating team to follow all season long. Isaac, speaking of frustrating team, John Calipari and the Kentucky Wildcats, after playing an incredible game against Kansas, competing with the number one team in the country, legitimately looking for the first time since we've seen this roster like a potential top 10 team, they go out and dang near lose to St. Joseph. They had to go into overtime for a victory here. The Wildcats, it wasn't a shooting issue. They scored 96 points. They shot 12 of 25 from deep. That's a cool 48%, but they got out-rebounded by St. Joseph's. We're not stunned by that, considering Kentucky still does not have Aaron Bradshaw. They still don't have a Gunyon, so they still don't have Zvonimir Ivisic. So you still don't want to get out-rebounded by teams like St. Joseph's, but at least there's an understanding for it. The Hawks also shot 15 of 37 from three in this game. So Kentucky's got some serious issues defending the perimeter, rebounding the basketball. And at the end of the game, we just saw freshman mistakes. Reed Shepherd got a steal and then handed the ball back to St. Joseph's and almost led to a game-tying three for them. So this is a young team. They're going to make young mistakes. This is the kind of thing that's going to happen. They play like this defensively in SEC. They're probably not going to beat a whole lot of teams, but they're going to keep hanging 96 on people. It's going to be a fun ride with Kentucky this year. I'm not sure how it's going to go, but it's going to be fun.
We keep saying that too, and I think it's so true. Like, it's a fun team to watch.
They're very fun.
I love that Coach Cal's letting them shoot, modernizing Kentucky basketball. What do you know? I think they're going to keep doing it. I mean, this was a game, you talked about Reed Shepherd. He'd been killing it. He only took one shot in this game, but it didn't matter. Kentucky still goes 12 of 25 from deep, but as you said, got to shore it up on the defensive end just to show that dichotomy. They're currently 9th in adjusted offense and 53rd in adjusted defense. Got to pick that up. Now, to be fair, St. Joe's is a decent team. Like, they're 109th or 106th at KenPom right now, so not terrible, but still got to have a better showing. Andy, this has been an off season, especially in football, about all these conversations about getting guys eligible. And finally, as you said, we got Aziz Bandango eligible for Cincinnati, and Coach Wes Miller from Jonathan Gavoni put this out from ESPN. Cincinnati center and two-time transfer Aziz Bandago will be eligible to play immediately after new information emerged that caused the NCAA to reconsider his waiver and appeal, he told ESPN. I've heard this language.
Yes, you have.
I have heard this language, Andy Patton, and I'm here to tell you, I'm just glad he's playing. We'll leave it at that. Let's move on, shall we? Before I get hot and bothered. It's just great. Let the boys play, right? Here we are. Thankfully, he's immediately eligible. It's great news. Andy, as we start to think about Tuesday's action in Maui, I'm watching Kansas and Chaminade get to halftime. A lot of family hugs going around as we think about KJ Adams' mom, who passed away from cancer. Yeah. And just, there's no words, brother. Like, it's just really these devastating things. Sometimes sports is what can bring us back together in moments like this. I'm just watching the parents hug each other and console one another as they talk about it. So thoughts go out to the Adams family, but but Andy, man, obviously we're going to have some more big time matchups on today, Tuesday out in Maui. We got that Tennessee, Purdue, Vols, Zach Edey. What are we doing? What do you think? How do they handle that? Yeah, there's so many fascinating questions in this game. For me, how Tennessee handles Zach Edey is key. I don't know if they're going to swarm him with double teams, what they're going to do. They don't have quite the size that they had last year. So that'll be interesting. But for me, the biggest thing I'm curious about is the battle of transfers between Dalton Connect and Lance Jones. Really excited to see how that shakes out. They're different style players, but they both kind of play that wing spot for their respective teams. And I think whichever one of those two guys has a better performance on this big stage, I think is going to lead their team to a victory. Yep. Chaminade is losing by double digits, as you'd expect, to Kansas at halftime. Again, we don't know right now whether it will be Marquette or UCLA. Let's say it is Marquette that wins. They're the higher ranked team. That's going to be another epic game in Honolulu, I guess,
Mhm.
technically. And we will then talk about that on Wednesday's show and how all that
Juwan
comes.
Harris versus Tyler Kolek, elite point guard right there.
Woo, baby, give me that matchup,
Yeah.
please. I want to see it happen. Andy, man, it's a great show. So much good basketball. We didn't even really get to talk about our top 25 or do Trivia Tuesday. It's feast week, baby. There's too much to eat, and we all need our stretchy nighttime pants. Friends, make sure you are joining us all. You can come be part of our Discord where we're talking about college basketball all the time. Please don't forget to subscribe to the show on video and audio formats. Smash the like button if you're here watching, and we'd love to hear your comments on the show. As always, apologies to the Lawyer family, unless you're able to win Maui, of course. Go Wildcats, and until tomorrow, peace.